Hey everybody, welcome back to the Plays and Fades YouTube channel. I'm your host, Gordo Gambles, and welcome back to the full card breakdown. This time for UFCParis, we are over there in France for a fun fight card headlined by Renato Moicano and Benoit Saint-Denis. It is our fun card, 14 fights to talk about. I do not want to waste much time. We've had a week off to collect our thoughts, to have a little break from the madness after a phenomenal UFC no-trick card of the Sphere. But we're back with, I think, is a pretty entertaining card. Now, let me not forget to remind you guys, Dana White Contender Series, still 3 weeks left of that. We were able to come back with a little bit of profit off of it a couple of days ago, so be sure to check them out here on the Plays and Fades YouTube channel. Be sure to also check out CoolBet, links in the description down below, as well as Establish the Run for more premium DraftKings content. As always, I'm going to go over this entire card from bottom all the way up to that main event, talking about my favorite bets, opinion of how the fight's going to go down, and DraftKings thoughts as a whole. Let's not waste any more time. Let's get into it. Get the fight night started with the 9-1 Zhelezniakova versus the 11-2 Chris Duncan. And if you guys have been following this channel for a while, you guys know I'm not the biggest Chris Duncan guy. I think he's a guy with solid wrestling, solid power, but I don't like his durability. He's pretty slow on the feet, and there are some holes in his game that I have tried to exploit before. Now, it didn't really work out too well until Manuel Torres last time, but a guy who I still am not the biggest fan of. But the ironic thing here is he's taken on someone who I bet against last time, Zhelezniakova 9-1. I took Kwamba on short notice against him, and I thought Kwamba could have had a better chance. I think I'm on a full camp. I would take Kwamba again. I think the guy has the skill set to beat Oki, but these are two guys who I'm just not too fond of. I think they both have incredible power. I think they are both guys who can knock out your lights at any time, and I do think Chris Duncan has more of a wrestling game plan to fall back on if he goes there, but two guys who I think could be a bit quicker when it comes to the striking, two guys who I think can be walked down, can lose in multiple facets of MMA, especially if they are put on their back, but two guys who typically want to go out there and throw heavy. I think in this matchup, though, I'm going to side with Zhelezniakova. Not only do I think he has the slightly quicker hand speed, but I think that as a younger fighter with the explosiveness he has, I think he's not only to absorb damage better, but I think he's more likely to get that knockout shot. Chris Duncan has been hurt, has been dropped, and I do think if there's a knockout in this fight, it's probably coming from the Zhelezniakova side. Now, Chris Duncan can go out there land takedowns. It's a possibility, but I think Oki's able to explode from the feet, win the optics with the striking, and win this fight here. The pick is Zhelezniakova, and I do think he gets it done by finish. DraftKings wise, because of it, I think Oki at 8.8K is a solid play. He didn't score well last time, and maybe that box score will deter people off of him, but a win by knockout is going to score very well. He's very boomer bust because of it. Flip side of things, I do think Chris Duncan is a live dog. I think the line might be wide, and when we have seen Duncan go out there and utilize that wrestling, I think that's his major path to victory in this spot. 5 takedowns against Morales, 2 against Asmus, and I do think if he's winning this fight, it's probably coming with takedown control time. However, I don't think it happens all too often. I will sprinkle in some ownership of Duncan, but at the end of the day, the pick is Zhelezniakova. And next up, we have the 8-1 Nora Cornolle versus the 7-1 Jacqueline Cavalcanti. Cavalcanti making a pretty quick turnaround here. Fought a few weeks ago, withstood some damage in that fight, was able to come back and utilize her volume and striking technicality to go out there and win that fight. And I think that's really what she is. She is a very good volume fighter, solid frame for the division, doesn't have the most power, but can win a war of attrition, can break people down the stretch, has the cardio and resiliency to win these decisions with that striking optics. Her opponent here, Cornolle, is not someone I've been the highest on, but she was able to shock the world last time with that knockout. She is someone who I do think has solid power, is more of a finish or bust type of girl because I do think she can lose minutes on the ground, doesn't have the most volume on her feet, and can be hit in her own right, but she's got heart, she's got power, and she can really pull fights, for lack of better terms, out of her ass. I mean, she can go out there and turn the tide real quick. She is aggressive, she is powerful, and if she does shore up that defensive game, I do think she can get wins, but at the end of the day, aside from that potential to get a knockout, I think the more active striker who will be winning the minutes and the optics in the judges' scorecards here is Cavalcanti. I think she's someone who utilizes that range better, is just better defensively, and who will have the volume to go over there and take over as the fight goes on. I do think Cornolle slows a little bit, so give me Cavalcanti here. I do think she's able to get it done. I say she gets it done by decision in this one. I think more finish equity lies with Cornolle. I just don't think she gets it too often. Cavalcanti is pretty defensively sound and will fight through a lot of adversity, so give me Cavalcanti. DraftKings wise, though, I'm not playing Cavalcanti this week. 8.7K. She just went out there and scored 66 against Nunes, and now she gets someone who is just as aggressive, but I don't think Cavalcanti's going to go out there and necessarily shoot takedowns. She is reliant on that volume, and she isn't really the biggest power threat either. So I think Cavalcanti wins the decision, and in doing so, doesn't outscore the people around her. And there are some very good high scores on a 14-fight slate. Cornolle, I think, is like the absolute dart throw this week. I think she has to get a finish to win, and she's 2-0 in the UFC. 105 last time is a big 6.9K underdog. So the upside is definitely there. I don't think she gets it too often, so I won't be playing tons of her, but a little bit of a dart throw due to that upside. Next up, 16-6 Daniel Barez versus the 12-4 Victor Altamirano. I actually really do like this fight. This is one of my favorite fights on the card. Daniel Barez, a guy who I think is very fun to watch, has not had his best footing so far in the UFC, but a guy who will go out there, he will fight for your money. Great power on the feet, very aggressive, and looks to work the body. I think he's someone who has had holes in his ground game, but really is a pretty decent, well-rounded athlete. He's very explosive, and he showed that in his last matchup where he hurt Philo a few times, and his striking the feet is definitely no joke, but he did slow in that one. He was taking down control on the ground. And it's one of those spots where, yes, he lost that fight, but I think he's still a solid fighter. I think he's still someone who is pretty well-rounded. Of course, he wasn't going to match up to Philo's ground game, but he does have some ability to compete in the mat. I think his striking is phenomenal. With that power, with all the levels he mixes it up to, legs, body, head, I think he's able to compete there. And I do think he is a pretty well-rounded prospect. I fear for his cardio, and I do think there are people who can definitely compete with him, but I like his chin, I like his resiliency. I do like Barez as a prospect. Altamirano's a bit different. He doesn't have that same power as Barez. He's not the same physical specimen, but he's super aggressive. He's got a ton of volume, and he'll look to go out there and just put a pace on you. He looks to thrive in that chaos, puts out a ton of optics on the feet. He's always throwing something, and although it's not landing with the most power, will look to break you down the stretch. And in doing so, I do think he leaves himself open to be countered, but is able to mix it up, and the takedown shot go there as well. Landed 9 takedowns in his last spot and showed that he can fight in all aspects of MMA. I think he is very well-rounded. I don't think he excels at any area. I don't think he's the most powerful finishing threat in the feet. I don't think he's the best defensively. I don't think he's the best control grappler either, but he can get it there if he wants to. As a whole, though, I think it's a contrast between the volume guy in Altamirano versus the power and technical guy in Barez on the feet. And although I do think Altamirano can go out there and shoot takedowns, I don't know if he's necessarily that much better than Barez on the ground. At the end of the day, I am choosing Barez to get this fight done. I think he wins the moments on the feet with that power. And although he'll probably be taking shots against Altamirano, I do think Barez is able to land the more powerful shots, and he's able to absorb damage better as well. And I think that optically for the judges, Barez not only has the ability to win those visuals, but also go out there and potentially even get a finisher as well in the feet. He is very dangerous, works all levels. Now, the one fear I have with Barez is that he's taken down, controlled, loses that energy, and it's kind of just out-volumed and outworked on the mat, and that's a potential concern for him. But I do think Barez has more finishing upside. I do think he's someone who is more powerful early, and until he does fade down the stretch, I do think he's winning this fight. So give me Daniel Barez. DraftKings-wise, though, a very interesting one. Like I said, he does have that finish upside. He's able to drop Philo on that one. Does have power to finish upside at 8.4K, is a pretty solid option, but I'm not exclusively playing him. Victor Altamirano, like I said last time, scored 72 points in a loss, 9 takedowns. He himself has a ton of volume. I think he has late equity as well. I think he has the ability to go out there and push a wrestle heavy pace, and I do think at 7.8K, he's a very intriguing underdog. Now, I am picking Barez. That kind of takes the love away from Altamirano, but I will be playing both sides. However, give me Barez. I do think he gets done by decision, winning those moments with his striking. Next up, 10-2 Aline Perez, 9-1 Daria Zhelezniakova in what is a interesting fight. I'm struggling with this one here, I'm not going to lie, because Aline Perez is one of those fighters who's not great, but she is DraftKings gold, man. She averages a ton of takedowns, goes out there, looks to get you to top position, and looks to just instill damage. She's not very technical. She's not really good, to be honest, but she chain grapples. She is very good from top position. She doesn't really have enough time to strike on the feet to really criticize her because she's just doing everything she can to take her opponent to the mat, establish top control, and look to get him out of there. Not the smartest fighter, though, does throw legal shots, can get hit in the feet, and does slow as the fight goes on, but is able to crush these cans with her aggressiveness, ability to get to top position, and just her relentless pace with the takedowns. Zhelezniakova is someone who has succumbed to that takedown-heavy pressure, which is why I see her as an underdog here as well, but a girl who's got the way better striking, in my opinion, is still improving, fighting out of a good camp, and someone who has the power to really deter a lot of people on the feet. She will be the much bigger athlete in the spot here, which could pay dividends in a matchup like this, but you have to know she has to be working on that takedown defense, right? You're not going to go into a fight against Aline Perez and not work on that takedown defense, and although she could be working on it, I think the chain ability of Perez is going to lead to takedowns one way or the other, and that's just all Perez really does. You have a pure striker versus a pure grappler, and the pure grappler in Perez is able to withstand damage, go forward, and continue to shoot those takedowns. I think she lands at top control, and I think she wins this fight more times than not. However, I think this fight is a lot closer than the line of tails. I did the tape. I'm like, oh, Perez should probably be a slight favorite due to her wrestling upside. I mean, she has been undervalued by the market before, but she's a massive favorite here, and I don't necessarily agree with that. Although Zhelezniakova is going to be the better striker, is a pretty big athlete, is someone who, once is on the ground, does not look great down there, can be controlled, and I do think if Perez gets dominant position, is super aggressive enough to the point to potentially get that finish. So I think Aline Perez is going to chain together takedowns. I think she is not going to stop until she gets them, and in doing so, probably wins the optics that way. I would not put a finish out of things. I might actually play the under myself because I do think it's either Perez early with the wrestling or Daria could take over with that solid power she has on the feet, and Perez does slow. But a fight that I think is actually more fun than people may think. I'm picking Perez, but the line is extremely wide. Daria is a live dog. Do not be surprised if I play her this week, but looking towards some violence. DraftKings wise though, I want this fight. 9.1K, Lean Perez scores very well. 109 last time, 138 against Evan Smith. She's gotten 19 takedowns in 4 fights. She's very aggressive, and I do think to win this fight, she's gonna have to spam takedowns here. So I think she's a very live play at 9.1. Flip side of things, Zhelezniakova is 7.1. Again, only scored 56 in her last one, but I think in order to win this fight, he's gonna have to do a ton of damage on the feet, land as many shots as he can, and look to get that finish. I think at 7.1K, I'm not ruling her out a win here, and I do think the line is wide. So potential Daria due to some knockout upside should be a fun fight. Give me the under. Gun to my head, I'm picking Perez, but the line is wide. Next up, we have the 20-4 Taylor Lapilus versus the 16-7 Vince Morales. Vince Morales making his return here. 2 guys who've already had a stint and is now in their second stint here, and a very interesting fight to me in terms of stylistic matchups, but not my favorite fight on the card, to be honest. Vince Morales is the type of guy who's very aggressive, very tough, but although he's well-rounded, doesn't really excel in all areas. Doesn't have the best hand speed, does not going to go out there and one-shot knock out anybody, but is very tough, will continue to go forward, has a great forward pressure pace, and although he doesn't always defend the leg kicks, someone who has the heart and the toughness to stay in fights at all times. Taylor Lapilus is a very good decision fighter. I mean, he's very technically sound, one of the best defensively sound fighters we've seen so far in the UFC, but lacks that like show-stopping ability. Is not going to go out there and shoot blast double. He's not going to go out there and get that one-shot knockout punch. But he's going to counter-strike, and he's really good at doing so. Phenomenal takedown defense as well. But it's a spot that I don't have too much interest in just because I do see it going to decision. More times than not, Lapilus goes out there, stalls the opponent, slows the fight down, and lands more impactful shots. And against Morales, I think he's able to do that. Morales will go first. He will eat all the shots from Lapilus because Morales is super tough. But more times than not, Lapilus is not only going to win the optics with his counter-striking, but have the French crowd behind him. I think he wins the decision a lot of the time. Give me Taylor Lapilus. Because of that, on DraftKings, almost no interest in this fight. Lapilus is 9.3K on DraftKings, and his last 3 wins scored 72, 64, 61. I don't think he's finishing Morales at too high of a clip. I think more times than not, it's a striking-based decision. Pass on this fight on DraftKings. I do think Lapilus gets it done by decision. Then we have the 22-4-1 Ludovic Klein versus the 12-4 Roosevelt Roberts. Roberts making his return back to the cage here, and in doing so as a very big underdog. Ludovic Klein minus 800 favorite, a guy who's expected to go out there and do very well, and you kind of understand why. Ludovic Klein has been making a lot of these improvements, has filled out of this weight class very well, and still has that same kicking speed, hand speed, power that he really has that has won a lot of these fights. He's a very good striker who has shored up that takedown defense as well, has been able to land some takedowns of his own, has been in there in some really good level of competition. Roosevelt Roberts was hyped up at one point, but lost to Rebecca in his return to the UFC. Before that, highlight reel knockout by Bahamondes, club and sub by Kroom, sub by Miller. Like, has not been the best run for him, but I do think the guy is a solid fighter at core. Like, he's got a good skill set, solid striker, decent jiu-jitsu, opportunistic submissions, and a guy who will fight for your money. But in this matchup here, I think it's a clear A side. Ludovic Klein, although I don't agree with him being a minus 800 favorite, I still think he has flaws in the cage. Is just a very good fighter, man. Very explosive early on, great head kick, great power to really rock the chin, and especially the chin of a guy in Roberts, who we have seen hurt before, but very good in-and-out movement, worked on that cardio as well, very good ability to shoot takedowns, win minutes, and just have the durability to stay in the fight as well. I think Klein is a very good prospect. I think he wins this fight a lot of the time, utilizing that power, utilizing that head kick, takedown defense, or takedown offense shall be there. I just think he's more well-rounded, more physically apt, and although the size difference is pretty big, a guy who just lands the more impactful shots here to win the optics. So give me a little bit Klein. I think he's able to get it done. I do think he's able to probably club and sub is the way I'd go. Do I agree with the odds? Maybe not, but Klein's a guy who I just think rates out much better in the long term. Give me a Ludovic Klein. DraftKings wise, like I said, club and sub is there, but 9.6K is expensive. Aside from the Cunningham fight, which I think Roosevelt would destroy Cunningham, Klein's not the best scorer. 89 against Moises, 86 against Bahamondes, 76 against Jones. Like, the guy isn't the best scorer, so he's very boomer bust. At 9.6K, if he gets that club and sub in round 1, yeah, he could be live, but aside from that, anything that gets extended, I think he does not pay off the salary. I prefer like a C or a Perez or a Benoit Saint-Denis in this range, so not getting to Klein all that often. I don't think Robert wins all too often, so not a fight I'm targeting as a whole. I will sprinkle in some Klein due to that early finish upside, but he is extremely boomer bust. Speaking of C, here he is, 10-0 Umar C, 15-5-1 Da Woon Jung. Another very sneaky fight. C is a very big favorite in this spot here, and he was in his last one. He scored 106 points last time against Tokos, and you see a guy like C who is big, who is strong, is athletically gifted, is honestly pretty good looking guy, very well defined on the feet as well, but a guy who you would expect to go out there and just knock people's heads off. But no, he's a chain grappler. He goes out there, shoots a ton of takedowns, is able to get them. Not even the best wrestler, but just very physically gifted, decent top control as well. He works through his submissions. is not the best submission threat, is not offering much in the feet at all, but is very physically dominant, able to get those controls positions and look to get finishes from there. Jung's on a bit of a losing streak, but has fought decent level of competition. Carlos Ulberg, Devin Clark, Dustin Jacoby, those are some good level of competition at this weight class here, and it's just tough for us to see too much of it, because although Jung is a guy with phenomenal strike, I think he pieces up Umar Sy if it stays in the feet. You know, he was taken down and submitted by Carlos Ulberg, a guy who never shoots takedown. Was taken down by Devin Clark, a guy who can be put on the mat. And although he has solid counter wrestling, I mean, he laid 8 takedowns himself against William Knight, is not a guy who I think can compete with the physicality that Umar Sy has, and that's why Sy's the favorite. However, this line is extremely wide. If this fight's in the feet at all, I favor Jung's power. I would even favor Jung as the fight gets extended because he has shown decent cardio, but more times than not, he expects Sy to get that takedown early, to establish top control, to go out there and work through positions, and look to finish a guy like Jung. So I'm picking Umar Sy, not too confident with it or the price tag. I just think it's a setup fight for the French fighter to go out there and have some success from the home crowd. I would not be surprised if Jung goes out there and fights hard for your money, almost like like that Raul Rosas Jr. fight a couple weeks ago. Rosas Jr. still won, but his opponent looked a lot better than the wide price tag entailed. So give me Sy, you should win this fight. And because of that, very solid option on DraftKings. Like I said, not the biggest fan of this guy. I think his time will come to be faded, but he's getting a favorable matchup, a guy who can be taken down. And when you're a chain grappler like Sy, who only wants to go out there and wrestle, you have very good upside. He only landed 2 takedowns last time against Tokos, but he knows he wants to grapple, has an insanely high ceiling, and at 9.4K, I like him way more than Charriere and Lapilus around him, and I will be getting to a lot of Umar Sy. I think he'll be very popular, but I'm completely with it. I think he gets those takedowns early, has some early finish upside, but like, he legit has 8, 9, 10 takedown upside. He is very aggressive with it. So give me Umar Sy 9.4K. Not getting to Jung that often, but I do think Sy is a phenomenal option. I'm picking him to win in front of this French crowd, although I don't necessarily think he is the next big prospect. His time will come to be faded. I just don't know if it's here. And then the prelim headliner, the 17-10-1 Ion Cutelaba versus the 14-3 Ivan Erslan. Now, this fight's a mess, and there's not going to be too much of a breakdown on it because it's an Ion Cutelaba fight. This guy is extremely explosive early on, great takedowns, great power on the feet, but he just makes mistakes, man. Puts his head into guillotines, has no cardio, has a very big lack of durability as well, and he's just untrustworthy. He'll either go out there and knock your head off in 30 seconds or lose the fight as it gets extended, and he's just a tough guy to trust at this point of his career, especially as he's getting older. The mistakes are still there. It's very tough. Ivan Erslan, I wasn't too blown away from, but the bar is pretty low to beat Ion Cutelaba here. You have to have the ability to survive round 1, and then you have the ability to knock him out on the feet too. So Ivan Erslan rates out a guy who does have a lot of power. I watch regional scene fights, 10 of them coming by knockout. He does have a ton of power. He does want to keep this on the feet, and I do think he carries that power a bit later than a guy like Ion Cutelaba. So if this fight does get extended, I do favor Erslan, but I don't know if it's some blind faith of having Ion Cutelaba. I feel like I want to pick. I still think he has fought way better level competition than Ivan Erslan. Ion Cutelaba has shown to shoot takedowns, and I do think he has the aggression to go out there and hurt a guy like Erslan, who I don't think is necessarily that great. So I think Ion Cutelaba might be my pick this week, as stupid as it is, but he is round 1 or bust. I think the live entries are there for Erslan. I think this fight should not really see round 3. I think it's Cutelaba round 1, Erslan round 2, and both these guys are not that trustworthy, so I'm not getting too active on this fight from a betting perspective. DraftKings-wise, though, I'll take this one. 7.9K for Erslan, like I said. KO upside, a lot of people have been able to score well against Cutelaba, but 8.3K, Cutelaba, when he wins, it's usually round 1. 107 against Bozer, 127 against Clark, 118 against Roundtree. He is extremely boom or bust, and at 8.3K, it's a GPP play. You're taking a stab on him, so I don't know if I'm reminiscing too much, but I did pick Cutelaba on this one. Very low confidence. Should be a pretty low affair, but I'm taking him to get it done against a newcomer in what should be a car crash of a fight. And onto this 6-fight main card with the 15-4 Perez, Ziam versus the 11-4-1 Matt Frevola, and I love this fight. Matt Frevola is one of my favorite fighters. He's super aggressive. He's got a ton of power in his hands. Great chain wrestler, but a guy who's willing to fight anybody, and I love that heart. I love the ability to go out there and be a fan favorite, and he's run into some issues. I mean, he's not perfect by any means. You know, being fed to Armand Tsarzukian that early too, and then getting knocked out by 2 guys with a ton of power, and McKinney and Benoit Saint-Denis is no knock on him. But a guy who, when he gets to step down a competition, is usually able to dominate. A phenomenal chain wrestler, great top control, has a ton of power on the feet as well, as he showed by knocking out Trudeau over, but a very fun fighter to watch. A guy who I do think is pretty well-rounded, but a little fragile. Perez Ziam's a bit different. He has been making improvements, but at his core is a pure kickboxer, a guy who wants to keep people at range, solid volume, solid cardio, and a guy who can compete in the feet, be a good point fighter, but not the most power. And although he has worked on it, maybe not the best ground game. I mean, McKinney was able to go out there and control him on the ground a lot too. Benjamini had some success doing so as well. And I do think, although he's working on it, Frevola is still going to have the big advantage on the mat here. At the end of the day, it's just how much do I trust the fragility of Matt Frevola? Because I think when it comes down to the optics of this fight, the control time, the aggression, the power that Frevola lands with is something I do favor. If Perez Ziam wins this fight, it's typically utilizing his jab, keeping people at range, and I just don't think he can keep Frevola at range too often. So I'm picking Matt Frevola. I do think he crashes the pocket, gets takedowns, lands the powerful shots, wins the optics that way. There's just a couple concerns. Number one being that chin. Number two being the fact this is in France, having some issues there, potentially with the judges' scorecards. But I like the finishing upside for Frevola. I like his aggression. I like his takedown upside. And I do think he's able to control him on the mat. Give me Matt Frevola, get it done. DraftKings-wise, though, I think technically both are viable, but I do side with the Frevola side. If you're playing Ziam, you're hoping that the chin of Frevola is cooked, which it very well could be, but more times than not, Frevola is the aggressor. Last 3 wins scored 115, 158, and 104. Phenomenal DraftKings score. I think he'll utilize that wrestling. I love Frevola on DraftKings, and I'll probably be getting to him a lot. Give me Matt Frevola, although I am worried about that chin. Next up, 19-10-1, Morgan Charriere versus 17-6, Gabriel Miranda. Now, Charriere is a guy who I think is going to be setting the crowd on fire. Very popular hometown guy, great striker, great counter striker, a guy who I do think has a great ability to go out there and mix it up. Solid athleticism, great counter striking on the feet, but maybe the most entertaining fighter in his core. I mean, he fights extremely close with almost every fighter, a ton of split decisions, doesn't really separate himself. Although he's a great counter striker, can be taken down, doesn't have the most one-shot power on the feet. And a guy who, although will probably win the optics and win on the scorecards in France, is not a guy who I think you want to bet at too much chalk, to which he is here. Gabriel Miranda is the complete opposite of Charriere. He throws all, let's say, safety out the window and just gets aggressive early. Phenomenal opportunistic submission guy, great takedowns, and a guy who is very physically and athletically gifted early on. However, he does struggle as the fight goes on. He's not the best pure striker, and he is just purely a guy who wants to take your back, climb you, and just look to submit you. He was able to do that last time, but I think this is a tough matchup. This is a spot where, gun to my head, more times than not, I think Charriere was able to survive the early onslaught, pick him up on the feet, and probably get a second or third round finish here as Miranda slows down. But I was surprised at how wide the line is. Miranda is no joke, and I do think if he wins, it's often with early grappling success, and I don't think Charriere is necessarily the best pure jiu-jitsu guy. So I definitely think Gabriel Miranda is very liable to go out there and pull off the upset. I would not be surprised, and I'm pretty shocked to see the line is where it is now. However, gun to my head, I did pick Charriere this week. I do think he's a better pure striker, better cardio, and does have the crowd behind him. But I think Miranda is a very intriguing option for the early finish. Fairly interesting on DraftKings. 6.7K, second cheapest fighter on the slate. Scored a 121 in his one win in the UFC. Like I said, very opportunistic. If he wins this fight, it's probably with round 1 grappling domination. He is my punt play. He is my Hail Mary, and I will have a little bit of ownership of him because I do think he wins a lot more than that price tag entails. I think he wins more than Roberts, Jung, and Morales combined, and I do think he does win this fight more than the line entails. Charriere up top, though, like I said, he does have finish upside in later rounds, but not the best DraftKings scorer. I thought he won his last fight, would have only scored 76, and that's against a reckless guy. Is willing to stay on the back foot, is not going to be landing takedowns of his own right. He's very KO dependent or bust at 9.5K. Like I said, I think the line is wide. So give me Gabriel Miranda as an underdog shot this week. Gun to my head, I did pick Charriere, but it should be a very interesting fight. The next up, we have the 10-2 Brian Battle versus the 10-2 Kevin Jousset. And what is a very, very fun fight? I think this one's kind of flying under the radar this week. 2 strikers, 2 guys who want to go out there and throw the reckless abandon in. Brian Battle's had a pretty good bit of success doing so. He's a very improved fighter. I really like what I'm seeing from him. He has shown great explosiveness, great ability to go out there and fight, and should have won that last fight where it did get called a no contest against Luz in this one. He has been very able to go out there and strike in the feet, very good reads, solid head kick as well, and a very powerful guy. I do like what I'm seeing with Brian Battle and the improvements he's been making. Now, he was taken down, he was controlled, he does have questionable ground game, but I don't think he's have to worry about it too much here against Jousset, who is also a pure kickboxer, a guy who does utilize his range very well, is able to go out there and pump out volume, great durability, great cardio, and a very solid technical striker. He will have the French crowd behind him. Jousset is someone who I do think has a solid opportunity to win this fight, and although I like Brian Battle, I think I'll be cheering for Brian Battle because he's a fun, explosive fighter. I was surprised to see the line where it is. If this is going to be a 15-minute pure kickboxing battle, although Battle's, no pun intended, although Battle's making the improvements, Jousset, I think, is way better technically. I think he's able to make reads. I think he's got just as much volume. I think he can also mix in takedowns as well. I just think he controls range better. And if you're going to go out there and have a kickboxing battle, I favor the guy who's been a lifelong kickboxer. So, especially with the French crowd behind him, I do think he's able to go out there, potentially win optics, and maybe get a favorable decision. But Kevin Jousset's underdog pick for me this week. I love Battle. I wanted to pick him, but the more I saw it, the guys that Jousset are losing to don't really have the same style that Battle employs. Although I do think the level of competition for Jousset is low, and Battle could go out there and rock him. I think the guy who lands more volume, has more technicality, more minute winning ability is probably Jousset, and I think he manages range all the way to a decision this week. Not the funnest thing to say, but that is my pick. On DraftKings, Kevin Jousset has scored very well. He has fought really low level competition, so I'm not putting too much stock into it. But he is just mostly volume dependent. I think he's a solid play 7.7. I'm picking him to win, and I do think he's not going to carry that much ownership, so a very good contrarian play. But when it comes down to GPP upside, Allen, Duncan, Altamirano, Erslan, I'll probably have more GPP upside. But I do really like Jousset, not only in cash, but as an underdog to win this week. Not getting to Battle too much. He does have KO upside, but very boomer bust, 8.5K. I don't think he wins this fight more than the price tag entails, so I'll be getting elsewhere. I prefer Barez, prefer Cutelaba GP upside, Frevola. So give me Jousset. It's sad to say I do like Brian Battle, but gun to my head, I am taking the better pure kickboxer here. Then we have the 17-3-1 Joe Anderson Brito versus the 13-2 William Gomis in a complete clash of styles. I mean, this fight's almost hilarious by how different these fighters are. I mean, Joe Anderson Brito is an absolute killer. He's got a ton of power in his hands, phenomenal jiu-jitsu, ability to knock anybody's heads, clean off. That knockout win against Feely is still haunting me. That guy is just an absolute tank. And he's facing a guy in William Gomis who is just a patient counter-striker. Him and Taylor Lapilus are cut from the same cloth, but he's super slow, wants to fight slow the fight down. He has almost no damage absorbed because he keeps his range very well, in and out shots, boring fights if I'm being honest a lot of the time, but solid takedown defense, solid counter striking. But it's really going to be a battle of the patience and the technicality of Gomis versus just the pure cold-blooded assassin of Brito. And in this matchup here, it's one where I did pick Marshall against Gomis because I did think he's able to have success there, and I will be picking Brito here as well. Brito's a guy who I think not only has the moment-winning ability with his power, but the durability to go out there and not really show the damage as much, has the takedown upside to take down and control a guy in Gomis, and has the jiu-jitsu ability to work off his back shot, get there as well. I like the explosiveness, like the moment-winning ability with his big shots. The only thing I don't like in this matchup is, again, the fact that it is in French and Gomis is French here with the crowd behind him, and the size advantage. However, I think Brito's able to explode. I don't think Gomis has the let's say, pace or pressure to tire out Brito like people have done before, and I think Brito just has one-shot kill opportunity, guillotine ability to finish fights on a dime, and I do think he's able to go out there and land those powerful shots. I will think he blitz forwards. I do think he wins moments that way, and do think he wins this fight if he's able to be aggressive enough. Give me Joe Anderson Brito. I do think he gets it done. DraftKings wise though, I will never sell you to play William Gomis because, again, never scored more than 79 points. Not the best DraftKings score. Horrible DraftKings score, for being honest. Whereas Brito has scored phenomenally well in his wins. 9.2K this week, a bit expensive, but 101, 86, 108, 104, 130. Like, the guy has scored very, very well. I don't think I'm getting a Brito that often because of how much Gomis slows down fights, but I will have some GPP ownership due to that round one finish upside, due to that power factor he has, the jiu-jitsu factor, and just the fact that he is just a killer who has finished all his UFC wins so far. So, tricky play. I will have some Brito, but really a weird fight between someone who is uber aggressive and someone who just doesn't always want to be in the fight. So give me Brito to win the moments. Should be a fun fight. Co-main event time, 14-4, Nasruddin Imavov, 24-5, Brendan Allen. This is a fun fight. A really, really tough one for me to call, but a fight that I do think to be fought at a very high pace, and between two guys who I do like. You have a guy in Imavov who is the way better pure kickboxer, in my opinion. He is nicknamed the Sniper. He has always had a great ability to go out there, find the target, have a lot of power, and really be a solid contender. I like the way he utilizes range. I like his ability to use kicks from the outside as well, and he is a very solid striker. Brendan Allen's been more of this, call an ambulance, but not for me. You know, he goes out there and he's able to turn the tide around. He's able to get rocked, but yet comes back. He's a phenomenal submission guy, has the ability to compete in the feet as well, has been working on that strike, and although he don't think he can compare to Imavov, pushes extremely heavy pace, wants to get it to the ground, is very dangerous once he gets down there, and has solid enough volume to win minutes in the feet as well. I completely understand why Imavov's the favorite. He's going to be winning the optics in the feet. I think he has better physicality. I think he can compete on the mat as well, but I think his line is a bit wide. Yes, Imavov's the cleaner striker, but Brendan Allen will go forward with reckless abandon. We saw Imavov struggle to make the reads with Phil Haas out of everybody, and I do think the aggression of Allen will leave openings. I do think if there's any ground exchanges, it does favor Allen, and I do think this line is just wide considering the clash of styles they bring. Now, I did end up picking Nasruddin Imavov, gun to my head, like I said, is able to have the physicality to keep it upright and has the better striking on the feet, but I had it more like minus 140, minus 150 range. Allen is dangerous. That pace and pressure is something that has broken Imavov before. I think this is a very, very fun fight. The pick is Imavov, but give me both of them on DraftKings. Imavov last time was able to go out there and score 89, 100. He has a solid opportunity to go out there and score well. And against a guy Allen who's been knocked out, who's been rocked, and who will force a lot of exchanges, I think can score very well at 8.9K. Flip side, I think 7.3K. Brett Appley is dangerous. 119 against Curtis, 118 against Silva, 107 against Jotko. Like, his grappling heavy style, his pace, his pressure, his volume allows him to score very well on DraftKings. I'll have a lot of him at 7.3K as well. I think it's a very, very fun fight. I did pick Imavov, but I'm cheering for Brett Appley. I'm not even gonna lie, I'm cheering for Brett Appley. Hopefully the aggression gets it done. Should be a fun fight. And then on to the main event, we have the 19-5-1 Renato Money Moicano versus the 13-2 Benoit Saint-Denis. Very, very fun fight. And these are two guys who just want to put on absolute wars. We have the God of War, and then we have Money Moicano, the guy who wants to go out there and just entertain the fans, make that money on the side, and just entertain everybody. Moicano's been doing it for a lot longer. Has fought the best of the best. Phenomenal jiu-jitsu game. Great ability to fight through adversity as well. Striking's okay in the feet. He's throwing volume. He's going forward, but he can be rocked. He can tire out as the fight goes on, but he's never out of it. His heart's always in it. A very fun fighter to watch. Last fight was dropped by Turner. Should have lost that fight, but rallied back and got a second round submission. The guy's a dog, all right? Money Moicano's a phenomenal fighter, both on the mic and on the mat as well. Benoit Saint-Denis is just a killer. These French special forces will always go forward. Phenomenal durability, phenomenal pace, phenomenal pressure, great heart in it as well. And he just goes for takedowns early, looks to break you, put you in these crazy positions. And he's a great submission grappler. He's got phenomenal physicality. And on the feet, he just throws with fight-ending intention, will look to take your head off. And in this matchup here, although again, I'm a bit surprised by the odds, it's a spot where although Moicano's probably the better pure grappler of the two, I don't see where Moicano really beats Benoit Saint-Denis. I guess level of competition as well, but Benoit Saint-Denis is going to be a more physical fighter. I think it lands more volume and wins the optics on the feet, has the better pure wrestling of the two, the better physicality, and I think is able to push past that cardio barrier a bit better, as well as having the French crowd behind him. I think this is Benoit Saint-Denis' fight to lose. He was mauling Dustin Poirier in that last fight until he was caught. Staph infection, who cares? He did lose, but he was a big favorite for a reason. Benoit Saint-Denis' style just screams entertainment and willing to break people. The same way he was able to knock out Frevola, break Moises, break Bonfim, break Miranda. Like, the guy just pushed a crazy pace, and I don't really know if Moicano can sustain it. So I think the line's wide, like I mentioned. I very much think Moicano can catch him in something. There are going to be a ton of scrambles, and Moicano is dangerous, but I favor the power of Benoit Saint-Denis on the feet. I favor the physicality of Benoit Saint-Denis, and I favor his ability to push through that cardio barrier. Give me Benoit Saint-Denis to win this fight. On DraftKings, though, I want both sides. Benoit Saint-Denis, one of the best DraftKings scores we've seen. 108, 149, 114, 135, 105 in his wins. Takedowns, power, finishes, takedowns. Like, the guy scores very, very well. 9K will have a ton of him. Flip side of things, Moicano, 7.2K. Been on a bit of a roll. 115, 97, 95, 97, 126, 121. All great scores. Very boomer bust, though. He very well be knocked out early. And with me picking Saint-Denis, I kind of hope that he does get knocked out early for DraftKings purposes. Should be a fun fight. I will have both sides, plenty of Moicano as well, but give me Benoit Saint-Denis in front of the home crowd. But that's going to do it for me here on the Plays and Fades YouTube channel. I'm quickly running through my quick picks. I'm taking Benoit Saint-Denis, Nasruddin Imavov, Joe Anderson Brito, Kevin Jousset, I picked Morgan Shayad, but that line is wide. Sorry. Matt Frevola, Ian Cutelaba, Umar C, Ludovic Klein, Taylor Lapilus, Aline Perez, Daniel Barez, Jacqueline Cavalcanti, and Bolaji Oki. DraftKings wise, a lot of phenomenal play. Up top, I'm liking C, Brito, Perez, and Saint-Denis. In the mid-range, I think Oki has some upside, Imavov has some upside. And then in this mid-range, where I really do like, for GPP purposes, Barez, Cutelaba, Frevola all have 120-point upside. A lot of downside in their styles as well, but can score very well. Underdog-wise, it's separated to two categories. GPP-wise, Erslan has a lot of upside. Allen, Moicano have a lot of upside. And Gabriel Miranda is maybe one of my favorite ones. It's the underdog down low GPP-wise. Cash-wise, though, Altamirano, Jousset, and Zhelezniakova. Maybe Zhelezniakova is a bit more GBP, but all those people have a lot of underdog upside on cash as well. No bets locked in. I will be playing something, probably some violence in the Zhelezniakova Perez fight, maybe a couple underdogs, maybe Miranda round one. Who knows? Make sure to check me out on Twitter at GamblesGordo to see what I'll be playing and see my final slate there. No rainmakers, so that's going to do it. Make sure to hit the like button down below, subscribe to the channel, check out CoolBet, check out Established Run. I wish everybody the best of luck in all your DraftKings and betting endeavors, guys, and let's make some money.